Hi everyone, and welcome to this quick and easy painting tutorial. Just before we get started, this is intended for absolute beginners, for people who want to get some cool terrain onto their battlefield, whether that's for a battle game or for a D&D or a role-playing game. It's not really intended for advanced painters. I don't think you'll learn anything. Please feel free to keep watching and see how it goes. But this is really intended for people who maybe aren't that into painting but want to get some cool looking things out on their battlefield. So today I'm going to be painting this Azerite Ruin. This is from Games Workshop. It comes in a pack of these, but I'm just going to be focusing on this one just to make it a little easier to see what's going on. It does come in multiple pieces. Literally all I've done at this point is cut it out, glue it together and trim off all little bits of flashing, things like that. So just some clippers and a craft knife have got me to this stage. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prime this in white. I like to use a spray primer. You can use a paint on primer, but particularly for things of this size, I find spray primers are better. They get really good coverage and they're so much quicker. So that's going to be my first step. So when you see this again, it will be white and we'll take it from there. Okay, so here it is now that it's had a prime with a white spray primer, and I just went over in some of the areas with Agrax white here from Games Workshop just to make sure that there was a nice white even finish on there, because that's going to be important for the next steps that we take. I'm going to be talking and using Games Workshop paints. There's not really a necessity in this. I'll talk about what you're looking for in the paint as well, but simply because this is a Games Workshop piece, I thought it most helpful to talk in terms of the paints that they would supply for it. But any kind of pure white, which will give you a nice even coat like this, that's kind of what you're looking for to build on from there. And the next thing that we're going to use is this Agrax Earthshade. Now, Agrax Earthshade is a brown wash from Games Workshop. If I open this up, try not to spill it everywhere, you can see, so if you're not familiar with the concept of a wash, it is much thinner than a paint that you would get than the other things. So the idea with this is that it flows well. It kind of finds the recesses. So without having to do any excess work, it will find the deeper points on the miniature and provide you with a more dynamic finish. This obviously is very plain at the moment. This starts to build the dynamic nature of the miniature. And all we're going to do with this is just put it all over to begin with. Because it's a wash, you don't need to be too careful in terms of how you're putting it on, because it will flow. And also, as I say, you're not aiming for a kind of smooth finish at the end. What you're looking for is an old and weathered finish, which is befitting of ruins like this. Where I would normally recommend watering down your paints, I don't personally water down washes. I know some people do. I find that they flow best when you just use them straight out of the pot, so that's what I'm doing here. As I say, I've chosen to use this from Games Workshop. Any brown wash really will do for this. What I would suggest is looking for a quite a dark brown wash. So you're not looking for like maybe a tan or something like that, or even a really reddy brown colour. You want something which is, if you look at it in any quantity, Agrax Earthshade looks almost black, and it's that dark brown, almost muddy finish that we're looking for. Because as I say, we're painting ruins. We're not making this look like it was built recently. We are making it look as though it's been here for a long time, and the elements have had an effect on it, and that's going to be reflected in the way that we are painting this and the way that it's going to be representing things on our tabletop. I personally am a big fan of kind of a painting style which shows that wear and tear, that damage nature. I mean, particularly obviously if you are painting something like ruins, but I like to think of kind of worlds where battle is so common, particularly if you're in a kind of system or a game where maybe the level of technology is not as high as it is in the real world. So if you're looking at a sort of medieval, obviously something like a Dungeons and Dragons is not set in the real world, so it's not set in medieval times as such, but that's often the kind of aesthetic that people look for in their miniatures and their scenery and all that kind of stuff. And things from that time are unlikely to be pristine and beautiful unless they're, someone very rich lives there and can afford to pay someone to clean it for them. Maybe a palace will be beautiful and spotless, but there aren't going to be too many of them around, and it means that when you do have scenery or a miniature or whatever it might be, which really is pristine and beautiful, it really has that much more of an impact, because people are used to seeing the kind of grimy, dark, almost muddy look of some of these things, and I think that's a really beautiful look for some of these games. As I say, I primarily paint and use miniatures and scenery for role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, rather than for this is from Age of Sigmar from Games Workshop. So I think you can use these things for a whole host of different purposes. And yeah, this would make a beautiful sort of ruined castle, cathedral, temple, anything along those lines. And it would be a really interesting place for your party in a role-playing game to end up and find themselves. And you can see now it's kind of started to take on that colour of ruins. And really, honestly, if you wanted to, you could leave it at this stage once you painted it well. I don't recommend only painting one side like I've done here. But you could leave it here. It doesn't look like a bad set of ruins, honestly. But I think it's often in those little touches that go beyond this that really kind of set it apart and make it feel a bit more realistic and lived in. And, this is, as I've said, a beginner's basic painting guide. I'm not going to go into great detail and talk about all the different little things you can do, but what I will do is I will finish doing this Agrax Earthshade off camera. It's going to take me a while, so I don't want to bore you watching me doing this for hours and hours, but I'll finish doing this and then I'll let it dry and I'll show you what it looks like at that point, so you can get a good idea of where we're at, and then I will show you a few more little touches that can really kind of take this up that little notch so that it feels more of an impressive thing on the battlefield or wherever you might be using it. Do be a little careful. You can see here with the kind of recesses on miniatures like this, do be careful not to let the Agrax Earthshade, or whichever shade you choose to use, pool too much. A little bit of kind of dark pooling areas at the bottom is not a problem, but yeah, it can end up looking very patchy if you allow it to do too much. So that's really one of the things that you have to look for, because Agrax Earthshade and other shades and washes are very liquid and kind of loose compared to the texture of paint. You don't want them to all pool. And this is what it looks like once the Agrax Earthshade has gone on. And I painted one coat on and let that dry. And then once I'd done that, I noticed a couple of areas which were still a little whiter than I would like, or where it wasn't quite the effect that I was looking for. So I went back in and I just did another layer of Agrax Earthshade. And don't be afraid to do multiple layers if that's what you'd like to do. I completely understand if you're quite new to painting and you're a little nervous, so you don't want to put too much on. As they always say, it's easier to put more on than to take some off. Although, frankly, if you really hated how it turned out, you could always just spray it white again and start again. It's really not a major issue either way. But I'm pretty pleased with how this is looking at the moment. And as I say, I think you could actually put that out on the battlefield. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what I'm going to do next is just show you a few more little tips and tricks to kind of take it to the next level. And yeah, maybe just elevate it a little bit for your games. Okay, and here we are back with the ruins, which have just had the white and the Agrax Earthshade added. And next up, we're just going to add a little more colour. So I'm going to paint in some of these bricks at the top here. And for this, I'm going to use Mechanicus Standard Grey from Games Workshop. Now, again, you can use any kind of mid to dark grey for this, which will have the same effect. But again, just kind of pointing out the Games Workshop ones, because that's I figure that will be most people's kind of go-to. I've also got here a palette. What I'm going to do is just water down the paint slightly so that it flows a little easier onto the piece. And when I say a palette, what I would recommend if you're really new to this is simply a ceramic tile. I think this cost me about 50 cents from a kind of hardware store, a DIY store. And the beauty of this is it wipes and washes clean. So it's fantastic for that. So we'll give the Mechanicus Grand Standard Grey a shake and pop it open. And here we go. So we'll take a little of that on here, like that, a little more just to make sure we've got enough. And we'll add some water, get some on the brush and add that in, just so it flows a little better, a little easier. You don't want a lot of water. You don't want it to get to the stage where it's hard to control, but just a little water means that it flows a little better on the miniature. And we're simply then going to apply it to these bricks up here. It gives a little more kind of variety of colour. It makes it a little more kind of visually appealing than a single colour, albeit that the single colour actually is very varied because of the washes that we've used. And if you think at this point it looks a little dark all over, we are going to lighten it up in the next step, so don't worry too much about that. But you just want to get a good coverage of everywhere that is, well, brick on this one. If you're painting a different ruins, I mean, the same principle stands really. What you want to do is just make it a little more interesting to the eye than that one colour all the way over. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this grey. The grey works well for ruins rather than going for a really bright brick colour. Anything like that. If something is ruined, it's likely been sitting there a long time and you don't want it to look new really. That's kind of the key. So yeah, this dark grey works really well for doing that. And just identify patches of the ruins that you think will work like that. There are some ruins you can get which are very, that they do look to be the same material all the way over, and it is difficult to find anywhere on that miniature to do a different colour. But I like to just add in a bit of variety. As I say, it makes it a little more interesting to the eye, makes it feel like there's just a little bit more going on, and that's great for something like this. And the advantage is, as you can see, this isn't taking me very long at all. So you can really add interest and colour to the miniature without spending hours and hours on it, which is not what you want to be doing if you're, if you don't particularly enjoy it, or frankly, if you just have lots and lots of pieces of scenery to do. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for now, and we'll come back and we'll do the next stage together where we'll lighten it up. And honestly, we're getting to the stage where I think you could definitely, after the next stage, use it in your games. But I'll just show you a little more after that to try and kind of elevate it one or two more levels without too much hard work. So I will see you at that point. So the grey is dried now, and next up we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing. And for this, you can either go back to Corax White, which is the one we used in the first stage to make sure that it was nice and bright white, or you can use Terminatus Stone, which is another Citadel paint. This is a dry brushing paint specifically. If you have this, I would recommend using this, but honestly, it's probably not worth buying another whole new paint. Corax White would give you a good effect, so don't worry about it if that's what you've got. But in terms of dry brushing, what we want to do is just get a little bit onto our brush. I've got a nice kind of flat, hard bristles brush here. Get a little bit onto the brush, and then you wipe most of it off on a bit of paper. because you really don't want very much on. And the idea of dry brushing is that it will just catch the highest points of the miniature. Now you want to do this all over and get some of this brightness onto all of those surfaces, the grey and the kind of Agrax earth shaded areas. And really this kind of brings a little bit more of a dynamic feel to it. It brightens back up some of those areas that you want as highlights. I mentioned before not to worry too much if you felt like it was a little bit too dark in some places, because in this stage you're going to really be bringing back up those highlights. Just further adding to the dynamic quality of it really, and making sure that it doesn't have that flat feel, particularly where you've painted the grey on. The danger is that it just feels a little bit kind of flat with just that one paint on there. So we'll do that all over again. This is going to take me a few minutes, so I won't show you this whole process, but I will show you what it looks like in the end. And yeah, it's at this stage that I was kind of thinking, if you want to, you can leave it there. That's going to look good. Once you see the pictures, hopefully you'll agree that actually it looks pretty good at this point. But I will show you another stage which can really just go that one little stage further and bring out some more of those details, so that's looking great. But as I say, I won't subject you to this for too long, because it will take me probably 5 or 10 minutes or something to do that. It doesn't take too long, but given that all I'm doing is the same thing over and over again, you don't really need to see it. And we'll check in once that's done to see what the effect is at that point. So here we have it once the dry brushing is done. Don't worry too much about getting the dry brushing on very evenly, because with these things, as we said before, the idea is to make it look like it's ruined. It's not meant to look perfect. And an uneven coat actually gives it that more of a lived-in, worn-down look, which is really what we're going for. So I think hopefully you'll agree that at this stage it's looking pretty good, and I think that would be perfectly viable to put on a tabletop. But next up, I'll just show you a few more little finishing touches that we can do just to kind of elevate it a little bit more. Okay, so now that that is on and dry, and we've got a cool looking bit of wall showing us something a little bit different from the rest of the miniature, I'm going to go ahead and pick out some more small details, which I think will really help to kind of bring this to life a little bit more. And I think what I'm going to do on this one is pick out these very small little pieces, embellishments along here. Just again to show something a bit different. I think perhaps that when this building was in its prime, they might have been sort of features for people to look at. So I'm going to paint them a little bit differently, but still, again, in keeping with kind of what we've done before. For this, I'm going to use Warp Fiend Grey from Games Workshop. Again, you could certainly use Mechanicus Standard Grey again, if that's what you'd like to do. If you want to save on paints, obviously I'm aware that if you are not a veteran painter, you probably don't have all these paints already. And if these aren't the exact ruins that you're painting, then feel free to find something slightly different on there. I think particularly on this one, where the accent at the moment is purely at the top, it just leaves the bottom all feeling a little bit samey. And I think that's really what we want to avoid. So if there are other features that you might want to pick out on your ruins that you're painting, then this is a great way to do it. If you don't have Warp Fiend Grey, as I say, you can use Mechanicus Standard Grey. You could actually go for a sort of metal colour in here if that's what you wanted to do, or really any grey. You just don't want to vary too far away from the colour palette that you're already using, really. What you want this to do is stand out a little bit, but not just look completely out of keeping with the rest of the miniature. It wants to be an accent feature, but not distracting and really just not looking right with it. So we'll put these in here. Again, I think I probably won't show you me painting all of these. As you can see, it's not taking me vast amounts of time to do it, but there are a lot of them on here, and each one taking maybe 10 seconds. We're going to be talking a good number of minutes. And given that I've already told you what I'm doing, you don't need to see me doing all of it. But again, I'll finish this off, and I will put up some photos for you to see how it's looking. And then after this, I'm just going to do one more thing to kind of boost it even further, to take it to the next level. As I say, if you don't want to, if you feel like you've done enough and at this point it's at a standard that you would like, you can stop whenever you'd like to. It's for your game. That's the whole point. But just one more little tip to suggest a way to go about it. So I will see you when I'm at that point. Okay, so now that we've got that finished and that's all dried and everything, it's going to come the last stage that I'm going to show you here. And that is simply, it's another wash. This is Athonian Camo Shade from Games Workshop. So this is a dark green. Any kind of dark green wash will do for this. GW also do quite a bright green wash, which I don't think works quite so well for what we're going to do. But any of the kind of dark washes work great. And again, because this is a wash, I'm just going to go straight from the bottle. I'm going to give it a little shake and get it open. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to use it to simulate moss and kind of damp on the ruins, which have, again, the idea is they've been there a long time, so they're going to have taken quite a battering. Because this will go from the ground up, we're just going to do this at the bottom. And because this is kind of simulating a natural process, you don't have to be precise with this. You don't need it to go to a predefined level, anything like that. What I would suggest is have it at its darkest at the bottom and then build up to lighter. And again, this just kind of gives a little bit of a bit more dynamic finish to the miniature, and also kind of gives it a bit more of an interesting, makes it look a bit more interesting on the table, and a bit different. And you can see as it's going on, it just kind of gives a mouldy look, which is great for this. I guess if you were doing this for in a sandy area, you could always do it a bit more of a sand-blasted finish. But this is great for anywhere where there's water, where it would have got damp and mouldy at the bottom. So as I say, we just kind of put this on. You don't have to be very precise with this. That's one of the joys of doing this, is it wouldn't be precise. These things never grow in discernible patterns to the human eye. So just make sure you've given it a good coverage right at the bottom, and then a little bit more kind of going up. And as you can see, I'm doing this nice and quickly. Doesn't have to be a long and involved process. I've got a lot going on there, but that's all right. It's a kind of a bit that's kind of sticking out, so it could easily have more mold on than some of the other bits. And we'll just keep kind of going round. Do leave some bits without mold, because that kind of looks again a bit more natural and a bit more like it's been a natural process going on. But yeah, again, you're just kind of ending up with the bottom looking different from the top, especially where you have the grey brickwork. It's nice to have something going on at the bottom to catch the eye and look a bit different from that as well. So there's a first coat. What I'll probably do is leave it to dry from this, and then see what I think, and potentially add a second coat. But it really is that simple. I'll do what I've been doing. I will leave this for a while, and then I will take some photos. Because this is the finished version, I'll show you a few photos of this, and you can see what you think, and hopefully you would like something like this on your tabletop. And there we have it. There's the finished piece. So I hope you like the effect that we've got going on there, and you've also enjoyed how simple it is to achieve that. Obviously, if you were trying to win prizes, do anything like that, you wouldn't want to use these techniques necessarily. But for something for your tabletop, especially if you are doing a large set of ruins for adventurers to discover, or for a battlefield or something, this is a perfect way to get those things out quickly, but also looking good and looking interesting, and providing that bit of something different on the battlefield. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like and subscribe. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see me give a quick and easy painting guide for, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Bye now.